Welcome to the Hole in the Wall Business Podcast with Bill and James. I'm James Groves, and along with my business partner, Bill Dement, we want to share our journey as small business owners with you. As owners of Hole in the Wall drywall repair, we will attempt to peel back the curtain of owning a small business in the trade service industry and talk about the many adventures of owning a small business. Hey, Bill.
James, good morning to you.
Good morning. It's a great day already so far for us here.
It's a great day, and I can hardly wait for you to introduce our guest just in the pre-show today. She has been a lot of fun, obviously quite knowledgeable, and I'm really looking forward to what we're going to get to hear today. You know, we like to highlight occasionally nonprofits that almost just tug at the heartstrings of Hole in the Wall. Yeah. Obviously, we are very familiar with the veterans community. We do a lot of volunteer work for them. Obviously, we're trustees with FAVOB, but one of the sister programs to FAVOB is Camaraderie Foundation, and we love what they do. I'd love to introduce the CEO of Camaraderie Foundation, Maria Cherjovsky. Maria, welcome.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for being here. And so, Maria, you've been the CEO of Camaraderie for a while, and we love to learn more about camaraderie and you and kind of your experience in this. And I think our audience needs to know the importance of the work that you at Camaraderie are doing.
Absolutely. So I have been with the organization for going on 6 months. So not a long time with this nonprofit, but I have been in this space for almost 30 years. I know, I'm not as young as I look. Sorry to disappoint. But I have worked in this space with many different demographics, typically known as underserved, whether it's people who are unemployed or homeless or victims, abuse victims or domestic violence, individuals in transition, migrant workers, individuals with disabilities. As people look at my background and all of the things that I've done throughout the years, they look a little puzzled and they look at me and they say, how on earth does this even come together? It's like, what exactly are you all about? And I said, well, if you really take a step back and think about the common thread, it really is about honoring the diversity that makes us so unique in who we are, how we contribute to society, how we contribute to one another. But more than anything, taking that diversity and creating programs and services that allow for a pathway that is unique to the individual or subgroups of our society for whom the one-size-fits-all would not have helped. With the overarching goal really being allowing individuals the opportunity for a hand up and to fulfill their goals, their dreams, their aspirations, and have an outlook in life where they can feel accomplished and satisfied and be self-sufficient financially in any other way that you may like to add to that without really depending on others. So if you think about the one-size-fits-all, really does not fit all. That's really where I have come in every single role I have ever held. By understanding, doing a deep dive in each of those communities, understanding their needs, and establishing programs and services and opportunities for them to really fulfill their life dreams and have an outlook in life, self-sufficient, independent, and that's it. That really summarizes how my entire career has come together.
Mm-hmm. So obviously, with your new role here at Camaraderie, I'd love you to kind of talk about what is the niche that Camaraderie fits, right? And so maybe your elevator pitch, your 60-second pitch, and then we want to do some deep diving into that. But for those who don't even know what Camaraderie Foundation does, give me that 60 seconds.
Sure. So Camaraderie Foundation is a nonprofit established in 2009, so going on 15 years, which we're very proud of. Not a lot of organizations, small businesses can say that. We are 100% self-funded through fundraising and donations. We do not currently take any funding from the government. And their niche, to your point or question, is that we heal the invisible wounds of war. What that means is any trauma, transition services, PTSD, mental health, taking the family unit as an entity and helping those veterans, although we also help active service members. A lot of people do not know that. And we help them through that transition, knowing that the transition itself can represent an identity loss, financial struggles, challenges becoming reintegrated into society and the family unit and everyday life. And then you help with that. So that's where we come in, knowing that mental health may have been diagnosed before or not, knowing that life is about to change in many different ways for those veterans. And the services they receive upon separation, you can ask any veteran, they will tell you it was not enough. So even though there are services in place, they may not realize exactly what they need until they step out. And then they'll tell you, I'm on my second transition, third transition, fourth transition.
Oh, my.
And what they're really telling us is, I have yet to find my space in the world.
Right.
I have yet to find what the next chapter in life would look like. And for anybody who has suppressed what they have seen and lived through in the military, it creates a pressure cooker effect. That's just what I call it, right? It's just an add-on stressor that creates situations where all of those emotions that they have been suppressing for so long will bubble up, and they can show up in different ways. So we tend to see issues with domestic abuse, substance abuse, increased divorce rates, disassociation. We also see suicidal ideations. And that's where we step in. We want to make sure that they are supported, that they receive the services that they need. And again, going back to my own trajectory, this is my linkage to the organization. How do we help them transition and have a fulfilled life on whatever this next chapter could look like? So we provide a lot of those services for them. And we do so absolutely at no cost to them.
Well, I know in the pre-show you mentioned that you do work with some that aren't necessarily supported by the VA, and maybe you could touch on that just a little bit. And I think that you were saying something about the VA doesn't really delve into a lot of the, PTSD and mental
Correct.
side.
Right. So VA offers a lot of services, as we all know. They do have a backlog for some services. It is not atypical for a veteran to come in looking for help and they leave with a prescription. And when someone is suffering from mental health, prescription can help subside the temporary symptoms, but it can also cause a downward spiral, and it can also result in addiction. So while VA tends to focus more on the physical wounds, our niche really is the invisible wounds. It's the mental struggles, the transition, is that isolation that they go through, their inability, I should say, or struggles with finding their footing after separation. So that's really one of the distinctions between VA and us, not to mention the difference in budgets for obvious reasons, right?
Right.
But that's the niche that we support. Another differentiating factor is that VA will look at veterans and qualify them based on the level of disability, different testing, different diagnoses. We don't make any distinction. If you have served, if you currently serve, and if you're struggling, you can come to us and you will get the support that you need.
Right. And you mentioned that some of them maybe even have been dishonorably discharged or something like that. But if they served at all, you guys will
absolutely. And that is a slippery slope kind of discussion. For some people, it is very well received, and they're very gracious and grateful that we do step in that place, in that space. For others, not so much, right? There's a stigma that comes to that. But the reality is, and any mental health professional will tell you, and even the veterans will tell you, when you look back to those individuals that have come forward asking for help, there were always signs. There were always symptoms. They didn't know how to pinpoint those. They didn't know how to speak to those. They didn't know how to ask for help. But when you start self-medicating or you start acting out, right? Think about children or anybody in general, right? You're just out of touch with yourself. You don't know how to process. Sometimes it happens quietly inside your own body and your mind. And sometimes you get to act out. And those are a lot of the reasons that end up resulting in people becoming dishonorably discharged. And when they think back about what happened and what prompted that, it really stems from trauma, concussions, experiences lived that they just didn't know how to process, and they didn't know how to ask for help. So Veteran Affairs is a giant in terms of what they do and how they do. And so they have to have processes in place, and we can't fault them for that. But it's easy for people to fall through the cracks. And if they're not able to identify the challenges that they're facing and getting them the help early on, it's quite common for them to act out or seek out alcohol or otherwise as a pain management tool, which can very well result in a dishonorable discharge. Mm-hmm. And that will deem them not eligible for some of those benefits. So again,
so they couldn't go to the VA.
They could not go to VA for those benefits, but we will. The other piece is that we also help the entire family unit. You know, VA is set up to, yes, if you have your health insurance through VA, they will treat the entire family, but their commitment really and support is to the veteran himself or herself. When it comes to mental health, it's really hard to speak about the impact on an individual and only that individual, right? We're part of a family unit. We're part of a system, whether it is through a partnership, friendship, family, marriage or not. We are not individuals that go through this world alone. So if you start to think about it from that perspective, those around you in your inner circle and your sphere of influence, they will absolutely be impacted by how those veterans are behaving, acting, feeling, and responding throughout those interactions. So a big part of the role that we play in their healing process is to take the entire family unit and support them through that process as well. Why? Because we talked about suppressing feelings before. There's a stigma that comes with a veteran asking for help, right? If you are in the military and you said, I'm having suicidal thoughts, I'm having a tough time processing what happened in combat, or watching a dear friend of mine pass away in front of my eyes, that's hard for anybody to process. And we may be able to speak to that and talk through it and seek out help. A veteran, on the other hand, is going to be concerned and fearful that their career may be over. Who is going to entrust you with a weapon if your mental health is not stable?
Yeah.
Who's going to entrust you with leading a troop on any mission, whatever that may be, if your judgment is now in question? So not only is the training they have gone through to suppress and withstand all kinds of scenarios and situations, but they have been told to suppress because that's what you do. That's how you get through that.
Yeah, you need that to accomplish the mission.
Absolutely, and it becomes a coping mechanism. It's so sort of like disassociating from that. You compartmentalize. I can't focus on that right now. I have a mission. I have a job to do. And when the time comes, if it comes, I'll deal with that. And that time sometimes never comes. And when it does, it just overflows.
Is there data on how pervasive that is? You know, is this a large or small percentage of people that have served or maybe been in combat or in stressful situations?
I don't know that there is any hard data of that sort. I'm sure there is, right? VA measures all kinds of things. But how much of that is tied to, well, let's start with, I don't know how much research they do post-combat and post-separation. At what point do they get to go back to those veterans now no longer serving, actively serving, and ask the questions? And I don't know. That's a good point. We know that it is underrepresented, or underreported, I should say.
Right.
We also know that the suicide rate continues to go up. So for a long time, it's been reported by VA and others that on a daily basis across the U.S., you can expect 22 veterans to take their own life.
My goodness.
But then when you talk to groups that actually work with veterans, they will tell you that number is closer to 46 per day. And if you watch the news, there's many articles that will showcase people like Navy SEALs, highly trained individuals to go through the most challenging missions any human being can potentially even dream about. And they were very successful at building a career and carrying out those missions. But when they went back to everyday life, they just couldn't handle it. They couldn't process, they couldn't cope. They just did not have the support system or coping mechanisms. And that's the piece that I don't think anybody has the right answer. Everybody's situation is so unique. We all process very differently. Our support systems are very different.
Yeah.
And for those who ask for help early on, of course, the greater the chances are of getting through this journey successfully, because we do save lives. That's our mission. And there's many other organizations that do what we do, just differently, but they do it as well. I think I heard yesterday something like 11,000 organizations that support veterans.
That's surprising.
So if there's that many organizations that are needed,
there's a large need.
There's a large need, right? Yeah. You don't need a scientific response to that. Otherwise, we would not be in business, and you wouldn't have that many organizations continuing to pop up to fill a need and a niche if a niche is currently unmet.
So Camaraderie actually, it creates a judgment-free zone for the veterans who are trying to get the help that they need, but they're afraid to because they don't want that stigma.
Absolutely. And interestingly enough, we see that with active service members and veterans who are afraid of losing their career, losing their VA benefits. But we also see with those who have transitioned into private practice, they do not want to call EAP. They do not want their employer to know because of the same thing. So I think that overall they've been trained that you don't talk about those feelings, you don't ask for help, you don't bring up any of those concerns, and it just adds to that loneliness that they are already feeling. Mm-hmm. And I am no expert in the field from a scientific standpoint. I am not a medical doctor, but there's something to be said about the increase in suicide rates and the increase in need. Clearly, we have not quite gotten it fully right. So we do a lot of things right, but there's a missing link, there's a missing piece that we are yet to understand or fully comprehend. Otherwise, we won't be able to stop the situation.
Well, you did mention earlier, and I think as we were talking before the show, that one of the goals that you guys have is to really just provide a stability. It's a bit of a safety net, maybe. Maybe you could touch on that a bit.
Absolutely. So you mentioned that we are that safety zone, and I mentioned the term stabilizer. I think it's the first time I've ever used that term. It just popped in my head today, because you need something to anchor you as an individual, right? As individuals, we're just complex beings. There's just so many different aspects and facets of our lives, everyday lives, so many different responsibilities that are all competing for our attention and dedication and resources, mental capacity. And as people, we're just simply exhausted. There's just so many demands on us. So who do you turn for help? And a veteran can come to us, and as you said, as a judgment-free zone. They can call us for assistance. They will not be turned away regardless of their discharge situation or their past history. If they need help, they need help. Mm-hmm. Because we're not linked to any medical systems or any governmental funding, there is no data being exchanged with anyone, which, by the way, based on HIPAA compliance, even if we were to be tied to any entity that provides those services, it would still not be shared. But people need to trust that the information will stay with us. So who is safer? Who can be any safer than a nonprofit that has been doing this for 15 years, that has no ties to the military, has no ties to VA, is not receiving any federal funding, and is doing this in an isolated model, in a way, from all of the other entities that they are so fearful about. And I'm not saying that to put down any other providers or services, because it takes all of us. It takes the village, really, to support the number of veterans that are in need of assistance. But for those who are more skeptical, who are more concerned about their privacy, we really feel that need, because they know that the information will stay with us and the providers. The other thing that we do a little differently, if you don't mind me sharing, is that even though we are incorporated in Central Florida, we do serve clients across 50 states, and we do so through a network of over 600 mental health counselors who work with us as part of our private network, so that if they are in active duty and they're being deployed or moving to the next assignment, they can still find someone that can help them face-to-face. We know that through COVID, telehealth became a big thing. I never thought of having a doctor's appointment and have them check the back of my throat over a phone or a computer or a camera, but that's what we were dealing with. Yeah. When it comes to mental health, there's something to be said about the physical proximity to the person that you're talking with. There's a intimacy that is built. There's a credibility that is built as a result of that you can't do through technology. And so as much as we can advocate for that, and we know that medicine has done so successfully, we've noticed, at least with our clients, so this is a very small control group in a way, because it's just our clients that I can speak to, they have not really taken on or embraced telehealth or virtual mental health counseling. And what that has meant for us is an ongoing need to find providers who are licensed in this space, who understand the military mind, who collectively represent a diversity of individuals, so that the veterans that come to us looking for help, they can choose and be part of the process of selecting who is going to be their provider, and that they can then have those sessions in person. Why? Because there's a vulnerability that is experienced in that moment. Asking a veteran to share their deepest fears and thoughts, it takes a lot. Yeah. And so not only does it require that physical presence, but the fact that it needs to be someone that is relatable to them. So we asked them the question, would you prefer a male or a female? Would you prefer someone younger or someone older? Do you prefer someone who's married or not married? Someone who served or did not serve? So one of the things that, again, one of the many unique things that make us unique is that we ask those questions. And a big part of our success rate is not just in the fact that we get them into the services they need, but we work really hard to match them with someone that they will be able to build that credibility fast, that they can look and say, you get me and I can trust you. And the sooner we can overcome those challenges, which become barriers in the course of their healing process, the faster they can go down that pathway and come out of the other end successfully. And that's why one of the many reasons why our success rate is 89 to 92%, depending on the year.
Oh, wow. That's impressive.
And for us, success is they're no longer having nightmares. They're no longer having suicidal thoughts. They're no longer spending their days in isolation. And their outlook in life is more positive. They're able to hold a job. They're looking at a romantic relationship. If they're not already in one, they're able to reconnect with their families. They're able to look at the future in a positive and bright light. And that's what success looks like when they work with us.
That's great. One of the things that kind of caught my eye with Camaraderie when I first started to learn about you is that, and you touched on it earlier, I want to kind of talk about it again, is how you look at the family unit. Because coming from with military members in my family, being overseas, being in theater for a long time, you're gone from your family for months or years. And then the family has to get along and just figure out how to do life without their mother or father with them on a daily basis. And then it's over. And then we talk a lot about the transition for the vet, but the family has to figure out how to live life with mom or dad who's been gone for a while as well. And they may or may not be the same that they were when they left, right? They may or may not have the same personality. They may have experiences that the family will never know. My father-in-law was in Korea, and there are things that happened overseas that he will never talk about. He's talked about it with the VA, he's talked about it with some counselors, but the families, we would never know what happened over there. And those traumas affect them, but it also affects the family because, like when my wife was little, her dad was gone to Korea, and he would come back every few years, and then she basically had to learn who he was all over again. And so what I loved about Camaraderie is that you look at the family unit as a whole. So it's not just about the vet transitioning back in, but it's also how to receive the vet back into the household as well, right?
Absolutely. So, and we do so in many different ways. I know we're focusing a lot on mental health, which is our niche and a big part of our mission, if not the main thing that we're known for. But there's really a science behind what we do and how we do it. If I didn't mention this before, we are governed by a board of directors, which represent a variety of cross-sections from different industries, but many of them are from DoD. And so they are veterans, they have been exposed to these situations, and they fully understand this. On the mental health side, we have a medical advisory council. And they actually guide us through what we do, how we triage, how we engage. And those are some of the most insightful and powerful discussions that we have, because that's what we get to determine the experience that they're going to have when they come back to civilian life and the support that they will need from everybody around them. And it's in those discussions that we get to talk about, to your point, James, what happens with a child who has not seen their dad for 13 months. Mm-hmm. And now they miss the holidays and the school plays and birthdays and so on and so forth.
And depending on the age of the child, that can be a lifetime.
It could be a lifetime. And if they go on multiple tours, even more so. We actually had a board member a couple weekends ago. We had our gala and the biggest fundraiser of the year, gala and golf tournament, Patriot Weekend. And it was over a reception that a board member caught my attention. He was just chit-chatting with someone. And for the first time, I heard him talk about how his two children, now 29 and 34, mind you, they're still processing the trauma of him being gone for so long, so many times when they were younger.
Oh, my.
And he was recalling being called to deploy and his children being behind the fence. And as the wife was bidding him goodbye, the kids were shaking, grabbing the fence and shaking and screaming for their dad like they were being abandoned. Mm. So hear him talk from that perspective and how now as adults themselves, and some of them already have kids themselves, they're still processing the trauma. It really goes to show how deeply ingrained this can be. And that is probably one of the biggest misnomers for mental health. We tend to associate, especially with veteran affairs, we tend to associate trauma with what they experience in combat. But not all veterans have gone through combat. Some of the trauma is just because of the separation, the anguish and the anxiety of knowing that their families are going through life and they're not there. Knowing that their families may be going through health issues and they're not there. Knowing that there's situations, deaths, illnesses.
Yeah.
Everyday life happens.
And as you pointed out, it's not just the service member, it's the family.
Absolutely.
All those same things affect that family.
So when they come back, and this is, again, one of the things that makes us unique, is that we do treat the entire family, whether it's because the counselor is recommending it or whether the veteran is asking for it. And what tends to happen is that we talked about suppressing emotions before. So imagine a veteran who is finally ready to speak up and share their deepest thoughts and fears, the root source of their PTSD. I think it would be very naive of us to think that all of those years of suppressing those emotions did not have a direct impact on the family once they were already back in the family unit. And in some cases, it can result in self-pain management, whether it's substance abuse, alcohol, or otherwise. It can result in a dysfunctional family dynamic where the children are exposed to a less than healthy parental relationship, or instead of being loving and romantic, it's about screaming or physical actions as well as people act out on those emotions. And so that's a big reason why we look at the entire family unit. That trauma is felt by all of them. And the longer it takes a veteran to ask for help, the deeper that trauma is now shared with their network, their support system. So we tend to talk about our impact, the positive impact we have on people's lives. For every one veteran, we really help 6 to 7 people. That's how we measure their sphere of influence, and that's been researched. But on the negative impact when they return, the same measures would apply because their support system is suffering alongside
so they're negatively impacting 7 or 8 people.
Absolutely, because nobody wants to see a loved one suffer and go through that. And as human beings, we tend to ask ourselves, what can I do? Why can I not do better? What can I do for them? Why can I not help them? So that same trauma that they're going through now is shared by their loved ones who wish they could do more, who resent the fact that they left. They resent the individual for not seeking help. And none of those behaviors, none of those feelings are positive ones. They're not going to help advance the family in a positive way. So without getting into clinical discussions, since we're not really equipped to do so here. But it goes without saying that we have made a commitment and will continue to make a commitment to the family unit. So when we look at making an investment on a veteran, we are already assuming that for every one veteran we serve and we support financially through this process, which again is at no cost to them, we have a multiplier of 4 for a standard family size of 4, right? The veteran, the spouse, and 2 kids. If that's the standard family size or the more typical family size, we go into budgeting knowing that there's the potential that we will be supporting 4 people for every one veteran that we take on.
Ready to start your own business? How would you like a jumpstart? Hole-in-the-Wall Drywall Repair is now offering franchise opportunities for strong entrepreneurs. When you franchise with Hole-in-the-Wall, we help you get up, running, and ready to start generating revenue fast. You get access to our comprehensive training program, continued support, and our proven business model that has allowed us to experience explosive growth. Achieve financial success while providing a valuable service to your community. Take the first steps towards achieving your entrepreneurial dreams. Go to holeinthewallfranchising.com. Have you seen the demand grow year to year? I mean, I'm sure obviously you're fairly new with Camaraderie, but I know you know the data. And so curious if you've seen the demand and the need for what Camaraderie Foundation is doing year to year.
Absolutely. So we traditionally will help somewhere between 300 to 400 people a year. When I looked at data from last year, we were already approaching the 600 count. This year, we will probably end up with close to 800 people. So the demand has really grown exponentially. We are seeing a growth of almost 100% month over month. Now, I need to qualify that number because there's a difference between needing assistance or case management versus counseling. And we haven't really talked about the other offerings that we have. So we engage with veterans and their families in different ways, right? Not everybody will come forward and say, hey, me, I'm ready. I have mental health. And I'm not trying to minimize the issue, but that's the reality. No one is eagerly looking for that help. It takes time and it's a process to be okay with asking for help and accepting help. In the meantime, we provide transition services. We have a mentor leadership program to help them with creating stabilization in their work environment and income. In addition to having what we call family fun days, which is a very simple term in fun activities, theme parks, picnics, you name it, is a family day out and about for hundreds of veterans and their families. Sometimes it's 200 people, sometimes it's 600 people at once. And we do this every other month. The reason for that is because we just go into it suspecting that there's more people out there needing help, who need to know about us, who need to find others with whom they can build an informal support system. They need to be able to connect, rub elbows, and speak with individuals who have gone through this process and journey before, so that if they are even thinking about taking their lives, if they're even thinking about self-medicating, they can then talk to someone who has been there, who has been in those shoes, and who has seen and found the light at the end of the tunnel. So if seeking professional help is not something they are ready to do, sometimes they need that buddy system. And your sphere of influence may not be the first people who want to share your struggles, but sometimes someone you just met, it's a better option. So we create that informal opportunity for them to engage with others, in addition to the family fun day, right? The family activity. So there's multi-purposes. The informal support network that is built as a result of that. The encouragement, support, and prospect of healing by being able to see others who went through that. Also, the fact that we draw them out of the house because we do not want them to become isolated with their deepest thoughts, right? That's when things tend to happen. So we want to draw them out away from isolation and remind them that there's a life to be lived. There's a world out there that can be joyous, can be happy. And by doing it with the entire family, we help remind them what it was like to have fun. When people engage in arguments and the stress that happens in family life, sometimes it happens in public. We see that. But more often than not, it happens behind closed doors. So we want to draw them out of those situations, out of that environment, and help them reconnect as a family unit. Remind them that it's joy and fun to be had, and remind them what brought them together as a family and their loved ones. So again, there's science behind all this, and engaging them in that manner, hopefully they will get to know us better. They will trust us to seek out the real help they need. So many of the programs that we offer, as at first glance, they may appear disjointed, but they really represent various ways in which we can engage with a veteran in need, whatever that need may be. And if they're just looking for transition services, we're here to help them. If they just want a fun day that is sponsored by us and the ability to network with others, they can do that. If they want to give back and mentor others and guide others through this journey because they've lived it firsthand, they have the opportunity to do so. They can be mentors after having been prodigies. And if they're looking for mental health support, we will absolutely do that and meet them where they are whenever they're ready to come forward and ask for help.
Wow. So you guys have your hands full. There's a lot going on.
We do.
Yeah. Obviously, that comes as an expense. Obviously, you're donation-based. What are some other challenges that you're going through, and how can our audience help?
Great question. So you asked me before about the need and the demand, and I somewhat answered that question. I'll give you a little bit more because that's really what the help is needed. So I try to make a distinction everywhere that I go between mental health support or counseling and case management. We have looked at the data. I love data because it helps tell a story in ways that it's not my opinion, it's not my narrative, it's not through my lens, it's the facts. And the facts are as follows. We tend to see close to 800 to 1,000 people that come forward with a request for help. We have to case manage those people, right? What it means is finding resources, finding referral services. Sometimes will be food pantry, homelessness, a referral for a job, or anything else that they may need, resume writing, whatever it is that they need, where they got to help them. Some of them, that's the way in which they engage us, knowing that in the discussion, they will eventually talk about mental health. But the number of people that actually follow through with completing paperwork in the triage process, which they need to really admit that they need the help, and what's prompting that, we tend to lose 25% of those people in that process.
Oh my goodness.
That's a huge number of people. So we have to case manage everybody to figure out that we are helping them in whatever way we can, and as much as they're willing to accept our help. We can't force the mental health piece. But as they're getting to know us and getting support, and this is where the case management, we're managing these cases one at a time, eventually 75% of those turn into mental health clients. So from a volume perspective, we're looking at around 1,000 people a year that we case manage overall. And that comes at a cost from staffing and resources and connections and building a network and community for ourselves to be able to round out what we need to provide for them if it's something that we do not do in-house. We also talked about the growth in need, but I'll share in a different perspective. We all suffered COVID in some way, shape, or form. Some of us actually had COVID. Some people suffered through COVID from a mental health perspective. The isolation, support network, or lack thereof, losing jobs, losing people. It became a unifier in a way, right? Because we all shared in that experience. The whole world shared in that experience. And it somehow normalized the mental health support discussion because we all needed to process what happened. The world shut down.
It sure did.
It did for 3 years. People lost their jobs, people lost lives, people moved. And so it is the one thing that we can all say we all have in common. And in a way, we can start to appreciate what a veteran goes through when it comes to mental health. Because normalizing that discussion means that more people are likely to come forward and ask for help because now it's acceptable to say, I struggle with this. And you will understand that, and you would understand that because you went through it just like I did.
Mm-hmm.
A veteran doesn't always have that opportunity to find someone who will understand what they went through.
Yeah, the common experience
The common experience,
so
that's
important.
the common denominator, absolutely. And so the fact that COVID normalized that conversation means that we're seeing more people willing and likely to ask for help, which is a good thing, right, if they need it. But it is a struggle for an organization like ours because you can't budget. No organization can withstand the 100% growth month over month. So that's a challenge for us and any nonprofit, even for-profit organization. The other piece is that when you start the process of mental health counseling, we're noticing that the number of sessions that they need to create that stability and success that we spoke about before, as we measured how many sessions they needed, it used to be 5-6 sessions up until 3 years ago. Since COVID, that number has gone up. They've needed 7, 8, and now we're encroaching on 9.5 sessions to reestablish that sense of normalcy. So if we look at parts that we've already mentioned, we're looking at a 100% growth month over month on demand. They all need to be case managed and triaged equally. Even if we lose 25%, could realize now this got really real. I thought I was ready for help. I'm not ready to be that vulnerable. I'll come back when I'm ready. But everybody, 100% of those people need help. And for the 75% of them that go through mental health support, now they're looking at 9 to 10 sessions per person. Before we were funding 6 sessions. We're also seeing that 34% of our clients are dependents. So going back to the conversation from before, how widespread and how felt that trauma is in the family unit.
Yeah.
Well, in our case, it represents 34% of our clients. So if we're budgeting for one veteran at 6 sessions, or at least we used to, now we have to budget for one veteran, 10 sessions times 4, based on the standard typical family size of 4. And then if that's the case, you can imagine what it does to a nonprofit from a budgeting perspective and how we have had to mobilize ourselves in very new and creative ways to generate multiple income streams and diversifying that because the need is much greater than we're able to support otherwise. So the options are we increase our funding support through the generosity of individuals and organizations who believe in our cause and what we do. We are and have been very event-driven, and so events still generate a big portion of our income, but they're very taxing on our time, and they can be very expensive. Hotels are very expensive nowadays for any venue, no matter where you go. And so we have had to re-strategize what we do from that perspective, because what's the alternative? We take less people, we help less people, or we don't help anybody at all, and then our mission becomes compromised. And so
it's a constant struggle of helping as many people as you can with the resources you can come up with.
And also, it goes back to another comment we made earlier, which was building a network of agencies, providers, and other entities with similar missions, whereby if there's a time in need that we're not able to support someone, we're able to refer them out so at least they can get the help they need. So we know that we are one of many entities. There's, I think I mentioned, close to 11,000 nonprofits that cater to veterans across the U.S. Of course, we'd like to think that we're very unique and special and the best at what we do, and we all have our own niche and differentiating factor. But yes, the funding struggle is always a concern for a nonprofit. So we are applying for more grants. We are engaged in more organizations. We're working on more sponsorships. We have scholarships. The goal for us is to never have to charge a veteran or their family for the support services. And that's something that we're committed to doing. So how can people help? Well, there's many ways. So thanks, James, for asking that question. They can volunteer with our organization. There's many ways in which they can volunteer. They can host a mentor leadership session. They can provide a meal for those sessions which happen at night. They can provide job opportunities for those who are in transition. They can sponsor a cohort. They can sponsor our 5K race, which is coming up, Turkey Trot in Oviedo, on Thanksgiving Day. And then we have our other events year round, whether it is a 5K, we have the ruckers, the rucksack race. By the way, as a side note, I almost pulled my shoulder out. I went to the first race with ruckers in Tampa. We did it at Busch Gardens in June. And I saw them. They still had their military boots. They had the camo backpacks. And I was told they're heavy. Nobody prepared me for how heavy. I approached them, greeting them, thanking them for participating and joining us on the race. And I said, wow, that backpack looks really full. And they're like, well, grab it. Of course, foolish me, I went to grab it like I'm grabbing a grocery bag. Right. I almost pulled my shoulder out. And it's like, what is in there? Dumbbells, 50 pounds worth of dumbbells.
Oh, my word.
So we have some very committed, serious runners and a huge network of individuals who support us. But there's never enough support. And that's just the reality of nonprofits in general. And we are no different from that perspective. So going back to your question, mentoring, sponsorship, hosting us, sponsoring someone in need, donating tickets to an event so we can take the families out, helping us with items that we can use for our silent or live auctions, through which we also generate revenue. And overall, just being present, knowing that as human beings, we are relatable individuals. We like that relational piece of who we are. We're not meant to be in isolation. And all of our veterans and families could use somebody else to talk to.
Yeah, agreed. Well, listen, I want to thank you for being here. And I want to thank you and Camaraderie Foundation for helping remove the negative connotation that comes with mental health. We all think that, you're in therapy, there's something wrong with you. Not the case. Going through therapy is important. For even someone who may or may not be at the rock bottom, therapy helps people. And what you're providing for the veterans are really crucial. So how can people get a hold of you if they want to donate? What's the website, social media, what's all that good stuff?
CamaraderieFoundation.org is our website. We are launching a brand new website, which we're very excited about, but the domain is not changing at all. You can find us also on Instagram and Facebook as well as LinkedIn. We post a lot of the activities that we do, events that we partake in the community. We get a lot of invitations to speak about suicide prevention and mental health and veteran life in general. So the more awareness and visibility that we can create, the more support we tend to garnish as a result of that. So whether you listeners are interested in giving back or they know somebody in need and they're acting as that buddy system to refer someone, or if you're listening and you need help, call us, email us, visit our website, submit an inquiry form, and we will be here to help you.
Excellent. Well, thank you for being here.
Thanks for coming in today.
Wonderful, wonderful conversation. A great organization. Hope everyone goes to the website, CamaraderieFoundation.org.
Yes.
And give your time, and just let's remove that negativity that people have with their mental health. And I love all the things that you do, and so I'm sure we will be in touch with some other things as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks everyone for listening. Another great show.
Have a great day.
We'd like to thank you for listening to the Hole in the Wall Business Podcast with Bill and James. We'd love for you to join our Facebook group and keep the conversation going. If you'd like to learn more about us and our business, check us out at holeinthewall.com. If you'd like to learn more about how to start a Hole in the Wall franchise, go to holeinthewallfranchising.com.